Ladies and gentlemen, ETIG Knowledge Forum is a platform for industry professionals to express themselves, share knowledge and insights, and induce a higher level of creativity in the industry. I sincerely thank ET for this marvelous creation. The word outsourcing is loosely and often associated with non-core part of the business. But often I wonder whether the same is applicable in the manpower outsourcing or the temporary staffing, keeping in mind that the frontline staff or the last mile staff is actually providing customer experience for the Indian corporates. I would now like to invite Mr. Subroto Sen, Vice President, Bennett Coleman and Company Limited, to deliver the welcome note.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the ETIG Knowledge Forum. Today, Economic Times is read by more than 1 million people. I'm sure you're aware of that. It is considered the business barometer of India, capturing the sentiment of every individual and institution that has a stake in the country's future. Today, we have amongst us a distinguished panel of experts who will discuss the key issues, challenges, and opportunities associated with evolving manpower outsourcing. Thank you very much and welcome.
I would now like to introduce the moderator for the evening, Ms. Mridu Bhandari.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this special ETIG Knowledge Forum in association with InnovSource. Is a flexible workforce really the answer to India Inc.'s staffing needs? What are the benefits and challenges of manpower outsourcing, and what's in it for the employee? To answer all of these questions and many more that you all must have, I'm joined by a very eminent panel here today, and please join me in welcoming them on stage. Yugesh Goutam, Group President HR at JSW. K. Narayan, President Human Resources, Raymond. Ajit Jangle, Group HR and IT Head, All Cargo Logistics. And Raj Shekhar Reddy, Director and COO at InnovSource. I'm going to set the ball rolling by asking each one of you where your organizations stand as far as manpower outsourcing is concerned. So Ajit, would you like to go first?
We, as a logistics service provider, where we manage B2B model, our requirements of the customers are changing very rapidly, and we use this specifically to support our customer requirements in line with our commitments to them in terms of service levels, in terms of continuous improvement and productivity improvement. So that is our whole strategic intent for the outsourcing.
Okay. Yugesh, what about JSW?
Yeah, I think it's more of a strategic issue when you look at your core competence. And also you look at what are the areas where you don't add value internally. It's also a question of profitability. So I think that's really the metrics which plays out for us. Having said that, I think JSW has been growing rapidly, and our need for insourcing is more than outsourcing.
I'd like to get some opening comments from you.
In the context of outsourcing, the way we are structured, it appears in different forms. We are a hugely manufacturing-led organization, so some part of manufacturing activities, which is the contract workmen, is one segment of the outsourced workforce we have. Apart from that, we have a huge retail network where some of the front-end store staff is on outsource model. Then we have warehouses. So the warehouse, partly some of the key people who do the manual work is on outsource. And then we have some of the other non-core functions which are on an outsource kind of a model.
Mr. Reddy, yours is a leading player in the organized staffing industry. Can you share some unique trends with us as far as the Indian market is concerned? What are the sort of industries, what are the sectors that are really coming to manpower outsourcing?
India, unlike US and Europe, outsources manpower at the bottommost part of the pyramid. Employees who are outsourced have job security, have employment security, have social security protected in some format. So that's the migration that's happening over the last few years.
Right. But Yugesh, within the organization, within India Inc. as a whole, is manpower outsourcing seen as a business and strategy decision, or is it largely just another HR activity?
It is all about, what is going to be giving us higher profitability. It's not about, just getting rid of something. It's also about the scale. How much scale you can handle internally, efficiently, smartly, and, where you can get better quality by outsourcing to people like them. So I think it's a very core strategic issue now.
Right. Do you see the ROI impact out of manpower outsourcing?
Of course, any business decision which is a core, there's ROI impact. The ROI impact not only about the cost reduction part of it, but how we offer a service to our customers and how we can improve our stickiness with our customers, how we can get a more wallet share of the customers. So I think because those people who are going to deliver, the people who are going to be a customer touch points are the ambassadors of that organization. So if we manage them appropriately, train them, how they dress them, how they are dressing it, how they are really behaving with the customer, and that reflects a lot, specifically in a very sensitive customer market today. And that reflects on ROI for sure.
Right. But what has your experience been with India Inc.? Do you agree that it is, manpower outsourcing is now being seen as a core business decision, or would you say that, do you interact with CEOs as far as these decisions are concerned, or is it just an HR-led activity?
In terms of the thinking, in terms of the way the CEOs are thinking, yes, what Yugesh and Ajit have said is right. But at the implementation level, it comes down to the HR head, and then it further comes down to sometimes the admin head. So they treat this whole thing like you get some vendor and just giving people, and like what is the lowest cost that they can offer and squeeze the corners and things like that. So that's how it's at the execution level. But slowly we are observing that few companies are paying more attention to this whole outsourcing and getting involved at the strategic level. So that's happening slowly, but still a bulk of the roles that we are handling are still as typical vendor. You just get the best price and give it to the vendor.
One of the key issues of manpower outsourcing has been the disparity between temporary workers and permanent workers. So how does a large-scale organization address that? What sort of philosophies do you try and build within an organization so that a temporary worker doesn't really feel like an outsider?
If the organization has a philosophy and the owners have a philosophy that anybody, whether he's outsourced employee, contractual, or my permanent employee, is actually delivering those services, solutions, or product that I want for the ultimate consumer, then the whole shift happens. But I think we have no choice in the long term. We have to move there and make it inclusive program, whether it's about benefits, whether it's about all the statutory compliances. They have to be absolutely done.
Do you ensure that social security and benefits of a temporary worker are taken care of when you're getting him employed somewhere?
Yeah, so there are two parts to this. Some are the mandatory benefits that require to be provided to Indian employees, things like Provident Fund, gratuity, ESIC, etc. Those are mandatory, and we ensure that a client or a customer pays for those, and we transmit those benefits to the employees. There are some intangible things like he mentioned about having some company facilities being extended, medical insurance, or say a transport facility, etc. Those are always optional, and those would completely depend upon the philosophy of an organization.
Would you say that there is a large amount of disparity between permanent and temporary workers in your experience with the companies that you've dealt?
In terms of salaries, the good part is that there's a certain role that is completely outsourced. So there's no like-to-like comparison that happens. But in terms of benefits that they enjoy, like say a rewards and recognition system, or like some facilities which can get extended, those are a matter of philosophy.
What has your experience been with professional staffing companies as far as the quality of people is concerned?
Let me walk out of my sector and talk about as a consumer. So if I am getting a delivery from Amazon or I'm getting a pizza delivery, I think the key issue is, am I getting in touch with a person whom I can rely on? Right. So I think those are the issues which, if you walk back through the value chain, there are several value drops which happen in terms of the quality of delivery, the quality of their regularity, the quality of people in terms of experiences they provide. I think there is a lot to be done in that area.
In the manufacturing setup, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to hiring and retaining labor, especially temporary labor?
I think over a period of time, what's happening is this particular category is identifying themselves with the permanent labor. And the permanent labor also want this to be part of their group, because there is a union and the union wants to expand its constituency. There is attrition, particularly when there is a sowing season happens. So suddenly this whole group is gone for agriculture. So otherwise they come back to work. So that's the kind of attrition you see. But that's something which the contractors manage, because they have their own way of finding people. But I see a larger challenge is from an industrial relations point of view, these guys ultimately also getting unionized and then slowly demanding permanency and then getting into indiscipline. So those kind of issues are bigger challenges that we are grappling with.
In your industry, are there some unique challenges that the warehousing industry has, especially with respect to poaching here? So what's your experience been, and what's the philosophy that you follow at your company?
As we are in the logistics, which is, let's say you mentioned about warehousing. Again, warehousing activity itself is very skillful. And to get the one person who is fresh till get a skilled warehouse operator or the supervisor or the person who is working on specific line of working, like, because warehousing for FMCG goods and automotive industry is completely different. Right. So a lot of know-how is with that particular individual, although all technology is supporting him. Then the challenge is that, let's say if you take one area where today you have 200 warehouses, that area become a hub, and the 200 goes to 220 and 250 over the period of time. From where this manpower will come? The manpower will come from the trained resources who is already established, and they direct the recruiters saying that, okay, I want this. Even they go to that extent that they want a vertical specific, because somebody is managing FMCG may not able to have the right skill set for automotive or maybe the hazardous cargo. So require a very specific skill set.
Are companies willing to invest in training and development of this temporary workforce? Because a lot of the times you just have them for a very short project basis, limited period.
We may not have an option, but I think not many organizations have done a great job in that area. Right. It's a fact. So there is a tendency to say that, I've given it to the staffing, it's their problem. And I think that's where the real...
is training the staffing company's problem, or is it the employer's problem?
It's the employer's problem, but the employers think it's our problem.
Yeah, so I'm exactly saying the same. So we both look at each other and say it's their problem, and that's where I think the employee is suffering and the whole model is collapsing.
Right.
So
maybe you both need to join hands and
maybe
have a more effective have a more effective training charge for employees.
Absolutely.
One of the good things that has happened in this country is this whole culture of entrepreneurship. And how has that impacted your business? Because we have a lot of startups who want to scale up very quickly, who have huge demand, who are well funded, they have a demand for manpower. So how has that impacted your industry?
A lot, a great lot. A whole lot of disruption has happened. They're suddenly expecting new breed of people who are readily trained and available to be available in the market. And there are no, like for example, this e-commerce is one very big thing. We all, some of us are users. There is a big demand for bikers. Earlier, companies, when they required delivery boys, they used to provide bikes. Like we have the Domino's or we have Pizza Huts who give bikes. But now they stopped doing that. So they expect you to own a bike and still do a delivery boy job of 12 to 13,000 salary. So that's a new breed which is emerging now. And like so far, the temp staffing has been the biggest industry using temp staffing has been banking, finance, and insurance sector. Right. In probably 9 to 12 months, it will be overtaken by e-commerce.
What's your opinion on the skilling and the skill development aspect? Whose responsibility is it?
I would think it is the employer's responsibility, because as a staffing company, these guys keep on moving from one company to the other. So if I have to get the best out of the guy that I'm employing, I better train him. So we've followed the philosophy of train him on the job. But you may not do a full-blown training, but whatever is minimum required for him to be effective is what we train.
Right. And one of the earlier points that Ajit had brought up was that of compassion. And within an organization, how do you sensitize your permanent workforce to be compassionate towards these temporary workers? Because a lot of the times the problems really are social. So how does an organization like yours go about doing it?
So I think it's by experience you gain that insight. You cannot do any amount of sensitization through a classroom training. It's very simple that when the regional manager and the circle manager is finding that the last mile person is not done a job properly, and that's affected my monthly sale, that automatically is going to hit the point home. So I think it's experience and really providing that insight then across the organization that this is really important piece in the value chain. I think organizations are becoming better therefore.
One of the bigger concerns is always the background check and the security check of the people that you're offering to companies. So how do you go about that? And are there a lot of companies who make sure, who are really, putting that point across to you that they really want the background checks done? Or do you think that additional investment is really not happening?
It's happening in some sectors, like banking has been very, very strict on these background checks. Background checks is also a very, very expensive affair. It costs anywhere between 500 rupees to 2,000 rupees, depending upon the level of background check you need to do. So people who are, companies where background checks is critical, they're insisting on that and they're paying for it, and we get it done.
But apart from banking, not a lot of other companies are concerned about the background or the security check or the police verification of a person. So isn't that something that would concern you as
we have a different philosophy. For example, let's say everything cannot be again measured on the cost. I think we need to see either what is the impact of that cost saving on the larger scale. For example, when we are hiring drivers, which again a unique requirement for a different segment, and if we, let's say, save this 1,000 rupees, we are going to give our vehicle which is worth of maybe 30 to 50 lakhs worth. If we save this 1,000 rupees and avoid that background check or whatever we need to do, which is right things, and then we will be possibly messing it with our investment itself. So you asked this question about ROI initially. I think ROI is getting built on about the right practices. If we follow right practices and the right model, business model, things will come in right way.
Yugesh, by and large, do you feel that India Inc. really pays a lot of attention to the background check of temporary workers, or do you think a lot more needs to be done?
I think it's an ignored area. Certainly, I think very fact that somebody from a industry is also validating that point. I think it's getting lost with the cost-benefit analysis, which where the cost takes the prominence, and also the fact is that last mile people who are driving it may not be qualitatively giving importance to this, but I think it's a huge concern. This is an area where we need to pay attention, like training, like this one is equally important.
Right. And would you say a small and medium enterprise can also afford manpower outsourcing, or is it something only for the large corporates? And I'm talking about a traditional SME, not a funded e-commerce company.
No, so manpower outsourcing is definitely going to be cheaper than doing it yourself. because it's not just about the brokerage fee or the management fee that they pay us, but a whole lot of back-end costs which just get inbuilt into the system are not required. Those get outsourced, and it's very difficult to calculate. Like the CEO's time, the HR head's time, the accounts time, the payroll time. Somebody raises a query that I didn't receive my salary for 1 day, or like I've applied for leave, it's not managed, or I have a medical issue, or I have some claim. All those things are costs which today in companies are not directly costed somewhere. So people look at like this guy's salary is 10,000. If I outsource it, I have to pay you 10,000 plus 10%. Why should I pay the 10%? But the 10% is a hidden cost that's inside the organization. So net, if we actually if we are able to do the activity-based costing and come to the ROI, it is going to be cheaper.
In conclusion, I'm going to ask each one of you for one best practice or a tip with respect to manpower outsourcing that you can share that other organizations can imbibe to make sure that temporary workers feel good and the organization is also profitable. So maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, so selection is key. How do you hire and which agency you go to? Between temporary and permanent, when you have to make the choice, what's the core function that you need to do yourself, you do it yourself. What is non-core can be outsourced, is the way I think philosophically I would look at this.
Ajit.
I think important is that the generation, if you see in this particular category today, the value system is very different. So I think important point which we need to see as a principal employer, exactly what really interests them more. Is money, or is it security, or the career planning? And the answer to this is maybe different for different individual there. So I think we need to tap that and a different market. So Mumbai, when we are outsourcing this, it will be very different value system, and something which you're doing in Nasik or something, it will be different.
What's a best practice that you'd like companies to pick up?
I think it's about having a philosophy that you're going to treat them close enough to permanent, which I think is not an easy journey. It is always going to take time, but I think having a direction towards that is very important. Second is, I think, learning from all the mistakes we are making of not training them, not learning from their insights of the last mile consumer whom they service. I think those are the things great companies are really capturing, that learning and really bringing back home.
What are our expectations?
What is your
from
expectation
our
from CEOs?
From our CEOs, we'd like CEOs here and here to give us a chair on their side of the table and treat us like partners and together address the problem. The workforce is out there. If I can get him, you can get him. I cannot create those people. So it's like get a good guy means we cannot give birth to a guy and make him a good guy. So if the guy is out there, I can do the same charm and same tactics.
What's the sort of support that you need from India?
So we want CEOs to look at us as strategic partners, and jointly we are going to address this issue.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that very insightful discussion today. And the Indian staffing industry is worth over 27,000 crore rupees. And you'll be interested to know that 75% of this is accounted for by flexi staffing. So it's clearly an industry that's really here to stay. And as the panel says, that the growth potential is still untapped. So thank you very much for joining in today.
So thank you, Mridu, for steering such an insightful discussion. And we heard perspectives from both the employer side as well as the staffing industry perspective. And what we find is there is a lot of meeting of minds, that at the core of the discussion is the temporary staff and how to skill them, how to bring in more inclusivity, how to give them more benefits. So I think, this discussion today has forwarded this space, and we will definitely work towards improving the experience of the temporary staff. Once again, I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers and all our esteemed guests who made time to come over and attend this session. You brought this evening alive through your presence and participation. Thank you very much. We would also like to thank the teams at ET Economic Times and ET Now, which is our television partner. And we wish you a great evening. Thank you.